I guess I'm the first guy, like that guy you send into battle to get shot first. First show, first guy. So here we go. Talking about IT architecture, which I have been doing for many, many years, seems boring, and maybe it is a little, but maybe it's not a little, because architecture is the foundation of everything you see around here, right? If we look around Las Vegas, there's beautiful buildings, not so beautiful buildings, there's crazy wheels you can go around in or whatever, and you wouldn't get up in that thing if it wasn't designed, if it wasn't engineered, planned out. They know every single little screw and light bulb and miles of cabling on those buildings and on those Ferris wheels or whatever they have to a precision. They write it all down, they have blueprints, they know where it all is. If it breaks, if the plane you happen to be flying back home in gets a mechanical error, they know where all the pieces are. So the challenge for businesses, especially businesses that use a lot of software, do you know where all of your things are? Do you know what your folks are using? Do you know who's bringing what data into your organization? Do you know if people are using an application for a process that you've never heard of, if you've never written it down? So architecture is the union between stuff and motivations or reasons why you use the stuff. When people build buildings, they go out, or when architects build buildings, the first thing they do is they ask the building owner, hey, what are you going to use it for? Do you need it to, you need to have a lot of tenants in there in a small foot space? Well, they build a skyscraper. You need to have a more calm feel where people are going to go on a relaxed vacation. You need a lot of land, and you need lower buildings and things like that. So we're going to talk about a little bit about how that applies to the IT world, but not just IT, your whole enterprise. So my first question is, who here is in a business or an enterprise that has less than, let's say, 100 people in it? Just a couple. So then, how many people are here with an enterprise with, let's say, less than 2,000 people in it? So that's most of the room, and I assume the rest of you are over 2,000 people, right? Big organization. So no matter what your organization or your enterprise is, you can define architecture for either the whole thing, for that 100-person company or 30-person company, or you can define the architecture for a slice of it, the department, the division where you're working, maybe even a building. So we're going to kind of look at some of those principles. First, a little bit about me. Who is this guy yammering at you? My name is Scott Lawrence Lawson. I'm the Director of IT Architecture at QAD. QAD is a software company for manufacturers that makes supply chain and ERP software. Okay, so what does that mean? If you have ever seen or driven or ridden in a Ford F-150 pickup truck, you know that truck, popular truck, 95% of the parts that go in that are made by companies that use QAD software to manufacture those parts. Ford doesn't really make the truck. They design the truck and they assemble the truck, but when they design it, they use architecture and say, hey, seat manufacturer, we want seats like this. Hey, wiring harness people, we want wiring harnesses with these properties and so forth. So QAD has software that helps manufacturers do that in 6 different verticals. So automotive, medical, consumer products, and so forth. If you've, anybody drank a Foster's beer? Nobody drank a Foster's beer, come on. They manufacture beer. You might not think it just sort of happens in the can. They use QAD software to manufacture Foster's beer. On my ride in this morning from the airport, there was a billboard for David Yurman Jewelry. Some of you might know of David Yurman Jewelry. They make that jewelry. It doesn't just appear there. They design it and they manufacture it. And those manufacturing processes are done with QAD software. And that is not a sales pitch. I just wanted to tell you that our company is very complicated. We're almost 40 years old. We're global. We have 2,500 people all over the place. And we have 10,000 customer installed base. So there's a lot of stuff at QAD that we have to keep track of. So how do we do that? We do that with enterprise architecture. You can substitute IT architecture for that. And the purpose of architecture, as I've sort of referred to, is to see the big picture and also to connect those dots and to share the decisions. So if you think about that, you can kind of relate architecture, IT architecture or enterprise architecture to building architecture in that you want the vision for your employees or your customers or your business people to see what the big picture is. How many of you heard of shadow IT? You heard that term, shadow IT? What does that mean? Somebody who raised their hand.
Things you don't know about.
Things you don't know about, those IT things they don't know about. Example might be somebody signed up for a cloud account and they're doing marketing with their cloud marketing software, and the marketing people don't even know anything about it. And what happened with that shadow IT, what they did is they took your customer's name, your intellectual property, your property that you own, that is the customer list, and they uploaded it to the cloud. And now they're sending emails, which are definitely not secure, all over the place with a message that you don't know about. So you've lost control of that messaging and of that information. So if you can use architecture to see the big picture, you can start to have conversations. That's the last bullet here, to share decisions. You can start to have conversations with people around your organization, again, whether it's 5 people or 50,000 people, about, hey, you know what? We already have a software that does what you want it to do, and you know what? It's better, it's cheaper, it's faster, and hey, it has all these other features that you don't know about. I've had multiple conversations over the years with people where they're like, well, the thing that I bought doesn't do that. Well, try this one. It's easier, it's more secure. You don't have to build a lot of stuff. How many of you know of people in your organization that kind of build their own solutions? Okay, somebody give me an example of one of those solutions, just quick, that you saw and you thought, oh my God, what is this? Anybody want to offer? Go ahead.
Microsoft Access.
Microsoft Access, what a lovely program. What is that? That's a relational database that basically, and what did they do with that? What were they building with that?
Basically copying the system database that we already had.
Yeah, okay, so basically duplication. That's another thing that architecture can help you avoid, but you didn't know about it because either you didn't have what was there written down in a form where people could consume it. That would be like an application catalog, so people could go, I need to build a database. What tools do I have to build databases with? Or I need to know where that data is. I wonder what applications have our customer address in them. Could you say that about your organizations today? Could you name all of the applications that contain your customer's address? Probably not. We couldn't a long time ago until we got architecture. What I mean by architecture, it's a little backwards because sometimes people think, well, the architect comes and he talks to the building owner or the city owner and says they make a plan and then they build it. But what happened in your organizations and in almost all organizations, especially with IT, it never got planned, it never got architected or designed, it just sort of grew up. It's kind of like the ramshackle house, down the street, where one owner puts on a little add-on, and then somebody else puts another garage on there, and then somebody else puts a weird fence, and then somebody else puts a different weird fence, and you go there as you're shopping for a house, and you're like, I would never buy this. It had no flow. It's like crazy. You've devalued the property by not knowing what the big picture is, connecting those dots, and sharing those decisions. Now, architecture sometimes sounds scary, and this is scary. This thing is the Zachman framework for enterprise architecture, the enterprise ontology. Anybody heard of John Zachman and the Zachman framework for enterprise architecture? One poor soul over there. We use this at work, but I don't present this to users. But I'm going to show you how to break this thing down, not even use it, but I'm going to show you the questions that are in here and the views that are in here and how to deal with them. So there are 6 universal questions you need to ask yourself and your users about your organization. One is why. Why do you do things? That's motivations and strategies. Does anybody here for their organization have or know where the strategic plan is, where you could read it? Okay, that's cool. Who do you work for, if you don't mind?
Consulting firm in DC.
A consulting firm in DC. So you can put your fingers on it and you can read it. Do people read that on a regular basis, or do you just do it once a year and forget about it? Or
Constantly, and I was on the team
All right, very good. Yeah, you made your new one, so that's good. So you know all about this. And strategies is a big word, but you can boil that down to motivations of why you're doing things. So this is a great question to ask. The first question I ask any business user or any person that wants tech or who has tech, I say why. Right? Why do you have Microsoft Access, right? Why did you build such and such a database with Microsoft Access? And it's kind of like the 5-year-old question, right? Why, Daddy? Why? And finally, you get to the truth of things. The next universal question is what? What is data and things? So what things do we have? And we're going to get into how you catalog all this. So as I reveal these questions, you're going to think, we're going to say, how are we going to create a list of these things? A strategic plan is a list of the whys. It's one format of that. You don't have to have a strategic plan, but you can have a list of whys. A list of what is data and things you have. What are things? They could be things like computers. They could be things like applications. Data, of course, is databases, but tables as well, and fields as well. What about the customer address? That is a chunk of what that we have. And you might not just have customer address, you might have prospect address. And guess what? What do prospects hopefully become? Customers, right? So there's got to be some transition there. The third question is how? How do we do things? Some of you might have process models or processes. You probably have some processes. I was talking to Joe over here about disaster recovery, and there's probably a bunch of processes that you have in place. Do you have those written down, or do you just know them and everybody has to come to Joe and ask?
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both, okay. So, Joe is indispensable. That's sometimes good, sometimes bad. What do your people do? Like if you have programmers, can you go up to them and ask them, what do you do? What is your process? I find that in every programmer you ask, they do it a little bit differently. Or the salesperson. What is the sales process? They might say, well, we call the customer or we call the prospect and we send them a PDF of the stuff and then we follow up or whatever. But there's probably a bunch of different ways that they do that. So the third question, how, is how people do things. Where is the locational ones? Offices and locations. Now, that seems pretty straightforward. Offices, you might have one or two or whatever. But you might have remote things. I think our friends from tabGeeks here have this remote location and might need to write it down and all the things that related to that. What was the process related to this location? Because maybe the room, I think Jesse was telling me that he first walked into the hotel and he saw this cement, these fake, look behind you, the fake cement wall. And he was like, oh no, that's going to destroy our Wi-Fi. But it's not cement, it's like fake cement. Or whatever, so that was good. So he could write that down as things. But what else is locations in IT speak? What would be a location that's not an office where your people work, that you have to track?
Somewhere where data is stored.
Somewhere where data is stored, in the cloud maybe, in a data center somewhere that you either own or you don't own. It could even get down to the rack level, or the row. I don't know. Does anybody here work in a big data center or been down in a big data center where you see all the racks? Right. So how do you catalog those? Do you catalog that data center, or do your people catalog the data center by row and rack? And
Yeah.
yeah, they probably have a picture of that.
Yeah.
Or map. Yeah. So that's a diagram, a specific locational diagram that you have to think where that is. And why is that important for networking? Well, the shorter the cable, the faster the light goes through there, right? The electricity goes through. And you know what? I don't know the full story, but in New York City, where they do the trading, right? The trading floor, they did a lot of extensive study and change on automated trading, and they re-engineered the whole location aspect of the New York Stock Exchange so it can go faster and they can make more money. So there's something, locations might be important. I bet you locations are important to Joe over here. The walking disaster. Or the walking undisaster. Who is people? And strangely, I put on there applications. Why do you think I put applications as a who?
App owners?
Say it again?
App owners?
App owners is a good guess, but not exactly what I was getting at. Applications, don't they do work? Has any part of your process been automated ever since you were born? Yes, right? That save button, remember the save button in the 80s or whatever? It's all gone pretty much. Your thing just auto-saves. You don't have to do that anymore. You, as the document owner, used to have to move your mouse and click on the little diskette thingy or whatever it was, or press Control S or, or whatever. Now, a lot of the software automates that for you. That's a silly example, but welcome to robots. Who saw that crazy Boston Dynamics robot video that just released a couple days ago? Did you see the yellow dog? Open the door. He was cool. I hope he doesn't get in here, but we have cement walls, so we're okay. So people and applications. Applications, think about it, they do work. They're like people. Although people don't like you to say that to them, but they are. You're going to automate them out of that deal. And as we say, well, we're not. We're going to keep you, but we want you to do higher level thinking. We don't need you to build code to release it anymore. We have automated tools to do that. That way you can spend more time writing good code. Lastly, when. So this is always tricky for most people, the calendars and business cycles. So some, the Nolans here, they have a new business of doing events. So they're going to be all about when, are they not? They're going to know, okay, when's happening, I need to write all that stuff down. But for many people, when isn't a big deal. Is anybody in here in education? Oh, a lot of everybody. So obviously when is a big deal to you, right? School starts in August or September after the kids get back from mowing the fields and working in our agricultural environment, right? Isn't that why we do that? And then starts all year and all that kind of stuff. So you have a lot of when there. So the questions, those go back to here. Let me. Those are encoded in here. Do you see the top row here? These are the 6 universal questions. And, do you need to know the Zachman framework? Not really, but I've just broken that down for you into pretty simple terms. So then I boiled it down to 4 pillars of IT. Applications, equipment, technology, and data. So this is the IT aspect. In those questions, you probably noticed things like process and so forth, those are more business-oriented, right? But these are the IT-oriented things. So when you do your architecture, and I'm gonna give examples of this, so don't worry, I'm just setting you up for it. It's a long setup, people. 4 pillars of IT, applications. Do you have a list, a manifest, a catalog of applications? Anybody in the room have an 80% complete catalog of applications? You do, and you do? Okay, very good. How did you get that?
SCCM.
Say it again?
SCCM.
SCCM, can you explain that acronym for us? We're not very technical in this room.
I don't really know what the acronym means. It's
SSCM.
it's a
Anybody?
software.
We can make it up. Anyway,
System center control.
there you go.
There it is.
There's the Uber tech guy over there. We should play that's your next conference event. Where's Jesse at? Is he? No, he left. He's like, whatever. They should play acronym Jeopardy. Wouldn't that be fun? That'd be a fun session. Or bingo or something like that. So it polls, I guess, all of the people's laptops and whatnot and PCs and tells the applications. Does it also poll cloud apps? Does it also figure out apps that you didn't know that they bought? That they put on their own credit cards?
If it's installed on the computer, yes, but
Right. So you have a pretty good one, but just at the client level. Now somebody else said you have applications. How did you get that list?
Going through finance, expense reports, looking at people's computers, and scaring the crap out of them when they'll get fired if they don't tell them what they're using.
You are scary. I know. I don't want to. Don't sit next to her. She was a scary one. That's good. And that's what I tell my team. I have a team of 10 people who do architecture. And we call that archaeology. I'm like, we came across this super crazy civilization in the forest, and it's called QAD, our company name, insert your company name. And we're going to find out what it is, and we're going to hack away the weeds, and we're going to dig up little pottery shards of stuff, scare the crap out of them, and so forth, look at your expense reports and figure out who did what, right? Now, in my organization, we have a list of applications, and we've correlated that with a list of licenses and agreements, support agreements. Because some, software today doesn't have a license anymore. You just sort of rent it from the cloud or whatever, and so it doesn't really have a real license. And so we have these two things, and we try to correlate that. And we try to find, well, how did this app get in there? So this is a good thing to do, is to build an application list. So equipment is relatively simple. Most people have a list of equipment. You were just saying you have a whole data center back there. And where do you work, sir? We're talking about the data center?
Eastern Kentucky University.
Eastern Kentucky University, right? Okay, so there's somebody's job to keep track of all those racks and all that stuff. And you probably have a disposition plan when one goes away or dies or something, and you take it to the shredder or whatever you do with it, sell it, throw it in the ocean for a coral reef building project. So great. Technology is something, and I'll give you examples of this a little later, but technology, in my opinion, is agnostic. Things that you use that are like Java, HTTP, FTP, maybe Cisco routers, that is just a piece of technology. That's a technology and an equipment together, but it has is it called the Cisco IS on there? It has some OS on there that you wouldn't buy at Best Buy. And then data. Data is a hard one for most people to keep track of. Now what happened? There it is. There are then what I call 3 keys of business. And these are also in the question: strategies, goals, and policy and controls. And we've talked a little bit about those. Strategies are, hey, why am I doing this? Well, I'm, doing it for a particular reason. Goals are, what am I going to get when I get there? What, if I accomplish that strategy or work toward the strategy, what is my goal? And policies and controls are things that govern what we do. So anybody here have to go through a SOC audit or SOX 404 audit or a GDPR? Anybody freaking out about GDPR right now? No? That's a data audit deal. Security frameworks and so forth are controls. So let's put them together. Before we do that, questions. I should stop for questions because I realized I was just talking. Anybody have any questions about what we covered back here, or what I was talking about back here with these items? Okay. If we look at some examples, what you need to do, and what I'm suggesting, and what I've done for my company, is build a blueprint for your business and your technology. So this is the business slide. So there's some examples on here. I'm not going to go through every one. You can kind of read them up there, of strategies, goals, and policies. So just to pick a few out, a strategy might be buy in bulk, sell for less. Okay, who does that? Costco or something like that. Hire for vision, build knowledge. Okay, so that might be a hiring strategy. You know what? I'm not going to do a resume. My data, my resume database is not going to be filled, and I'm not going to use search terms for all the little acronyms that people have. I'm going to hire for vision. So what I'm going to do, that's going to drive my HR process. If I have that strategy, that will drive a process to say, I want to hire people that are visionary, and when I review resumes, this is what I'm going to do. Okay? And Jesse, I have a question for you. Are all these slides going to be online to the attendees?
Yes.
Okay, so I saw a few people taking photos. You're perfectly fine to take photos. I prefer you to take photos of me, but whatever. So, not really. So they'll be online, and that's fine. And of course, I'm happy to talk about this. Again, I'm not selling anything, like Jesse said. There's nothing to sell. It's all pretty much knowledge. But it's in how you break it down and do it. So look at the goals. Increase the gross margin in EMEA, so in Europe, by 10%. That's a very specific goal. Have a 0 accident month. If you're a factory or something, you want to meet that goal. Well, what do you got to do? What kind of architecture do you need to meet that goal and to prove that you had that goal? Well, you need a control to say, well, why do we want to do this? Well, The OSHA says we need to, so they have an OSHA control and whatever. Maybe there's another control that says if we do that, such and such a, we'll get into the such and such a safe manufacturing organization that they have. And how do you know if it's a zero accident month? What do you got to do? Like, how many accidents did you have last month? Did you fall over? Did you spill coffee on yourself? Did you, I don't know, drop a glass? I don't know. You might have. I probably did all three of those, but you didn't write them down, probably, right? So you need to write them down. What do you need to write them? How do you write them down? You put it on a piece of paper? No. You build a database, maybe an Access, maybe not. You figure out, well, what is the right place to write that down? So then policies are also important. So policies, you can see some of those. That, you know, we follow this, all data in transit must be encrypted. What does that mean? I'm sure some tech person knows. What would you use to encrypt data in transit? Technology would you use? SSL, TLS, right? Sometimes people say, oh, it's the HTTPS protocol you'd use on there. That is an example of a technology you use when you're writing it down. Oh, well, the technology we use is this. We use 128-bit encryption, or we exclusively use NTFS for hard drives to format them. So now when we get into the technology part, you have these four things that I pointed out before. Listing your applications, we talked about those. I think one thing that I pointed out that some people seem to do, even with great systems, they track all their applications, but they don't get the cloud ones. They don't get the ones that they don't actually own, that they can't see on the hard drive. So there are systems that can do that for you, but there's also, if you're a small enough company, you can just write them down. I mean, we're a 2,500 person company, and we basically wrote them down. We did exactly what you were doing, like teased them out over a couple of years trying to figure it out. And now we have a pretty good database of them. So equipment, that's pretty obvious. We track servers, routers, wireless access points, printers, all this stuff. Anything that has an asset tag on it, anything we thought we had to pay for and we're going to deprecate, we track that stuff. And we track it in a system. The system we use to track it is called SolarWinds, and most people use that as a what do I want to say, like a monitoring system, right? Is this server up or down, or how's its hard drive or whatever? And it's great at that. We use it for that too, but I realized, you know what? That's a gigantic database full of my stuff. So I'm going to use that, because that's going to be more current than what finance knows. Because, you know, if you want it monitored, you're going to put it in there even if you got it for free or something like that. Technologies, I show you some examples there. And data and content is an interesting one. You need to track them at the database level, and also what we call a conceptual data entity level. So if you think about databases, you might have a big database, and then you might have tables in it, right? Not might, you will have tables in it for the most part, unless it's NoSQL or something like that. And those tables are going to be called like customers and products and this and that. That's a nice, clean entity where you can either go ask the database developer or ask the company that you paid for the software, or use a tool to interrogate the database to find out what's in there and kind of clump your data together into discernible bits. Question?
So do you use SolarWinds as your CMDB change management database, or are you using in conjunction with a different change management database and or whatever you're using as a help desk system, you know, Remedy or something like that?
Yeah, very good question. So I'm going to repeat it for the film or whatever. The film, you can tell I'm an old guy. For the film, man. We use SolarWinds, not really as the change management database. He asked, do I use SolarWinds, which is a monitoring system. We use it as an inventory of all of our things. Change management is done in the Atlassian suite products, Jira, and we use Jira for our internal help desk, and probably a few other little bits that we put together ourselves. Yeah. So you got to figure out what is your data and what granularity level your data, you will keep your data. Some people just go, well, I know I have a database, I have sales database, and I have this database, and I have that database. The problem is when you get into cloud tools, you don't even know what the database is. So you have to kind of discern. To me, this has been the hardest part, is to discern what data am I tracking here. Now, how do you document your EA, your enterprise architecture, or your IT architecture? Relatively obvious. You could do it in spreadsheets, drawings, and documents. You could use tools like I said we were doing, but they all have to come together. So these are some ideas that I have, like if you're very low budget or whatever, you can just use Google Suite and Draw.io. Draw.io is a really nice drawing tool for free, pretty much on the web. Or Visio and Microsoft Office, that's fine, Visio for diagrams. I'm going to show you some of our diagrams. We use a database. There's a couple of ones that I mentioned up here. Archimate tool is a free online enterprise architecture database you can get into. You can import things. So what we do, I think your name's Christopher, right?
Yeah.
What we do from SolarWinds is we import all that stuff into our tool. We use Irwin EA Agile, that's the second one on there. And we import all that stuff in. Every single day we update our database, our EA database, from live data. It pulls in not only the equipment, but the connections between the equipment. And there's some other ones I mentioned on there. Again, not selling any of these. My only opinion is I like Irwin EA Agile. It used to be called CaseWise Evolve. And I picked that one a few years ago, so I'm not going to throw it out for some new one. I'm sure all these other ones are pretty good, or just as good, or whatever. But if you don't have a database, if you don't have all that stuff, if you have a smaller company, I would encourage you just to write it down. Just write it down. Like, write down the bigger pieces. Go for the 80-20 rule, right? It's just write down some stuff, and then share it with your people. So in keeping your AA current, what we do, my suggestion, and this is contrary to the enterprise architecture mucky mucks or whatever that sell the big fat books, and probably John Zachman himself, is I keep it current. I think it's as is all the time. So I import workers into my database from Workday, and so they come in and they go out. We hire somebody, they're in. We fire somebody, they're out. And we associate those workers with the things they're responsible with the process that they're responsible with the, like our whole help desk, we call them R1, R2, so it's response 1, response 2. So if something's broken, you call this guy. We have that listed in our database. So you can look up, like, who do I call on the crazy database? Whatever, we wrote it down. You have it, you can't get rid of it. You might as well write it down. You might as well figure out who the person is to call when it's broken and put it somewhere. And then when your help desk goes, hey, XYZ database is broken, who do I call? They can just look it up, and keeping that current. So as I call them, the EA mucky mucks, they want to do EA project by project, like, hey, we're going to consolidate our data centers. Let's do enterprise architecture. Has anybody been involved in an enterprise architecture project at your firm, like for changes? You have, right? How was it? Was it
hell.
It was hell, okay. With 2 L's, right?
2 L's.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Yeah, and why was that?
Because everybody had their own input and nobody could agree what to do.
Nobody could agree what to
So
do.
we just wasted a ton of time.
Yeah, and that's what I find. In my opinion, my feeling of why you do architecture, yeah, okay, you can do it to build a new data center, to migrate stuff, or whatever you're doing, change platforms. But I think it's more important to just share it with everybody to get that shared view, right? It's like the Wikipedia of stuff, right? Like years ago, Wikipedia was laughed at. Oh, that's dumb, it's inaccurate. But now, pretty accurate. Like I bet you all of your children, if you have them, have used Wikipedia in school to look up, pelicans or whatever. And all that stuff is pretty accurate in there about pelicans. And, everybody knows about them. Today, you can, say, hey, Google, how much does a pelican weigh? And it'll tell you. And that's what we're trying to bring to your enterprise with architecture, is to say, hey, architecture, how many servers do we have in Barcelona? Right? Now, mine doesn't work for voice, but it could, I suppose. Share it with everybody. Connect business questions to artifacts. So this is an important piece. Artifacts are just all the little things you collect, like a server here and an app there and so forth. But connect the business questions, just like I just did. So what's a business question that somebody asked you the other day?
Well, in the context of what you just said, hey, EA, how how many servers do I need?
How many servers do I need, right?
If you, we know how many you have at that point. How
Mhm.
many do you need?
Exactly. Anybody think of another question? Maybe not about servers? What do the programmers do all day? That's a process, right? When will the, will this app that we're building be available to people in Africa or whatever? So what did I just say? Well, it's a process, it's a location, so it's a how, it's a where, it's a when, it's a what, all those questions. This thing here that I've just brought up, can somebody give me a time check? Like what time is it?
2:30.
It's 2:30, okay, good. Because I wanted to spend some time just showing you what I have. This is Casewise Evolve. This is a website. It's live. These are not screenshots. I told my team today, please don't mess with it and take it down at 2. Basically, it's just a website. Now, this is one view. This is a diagram that normally people would draw up in Draw.io or Visio or something like that. And this is a diagram that I drew in the tool, but it's live, so you can click on it. So these things are our high-level 9 capabilities, what we deliver to the business. So IT delivers to the business. We enable knowledge management for the business. And when I click on this and drill down, you know what, it's probably going to log me in now because I've been talking a little bit of time. Let it whir a little bit. Pray for a good internet connection here. Keep praying. You're not praying hard enough. Okay, you prayed hard enough. Amen. These are the things that we provide underneath knowledge management. So knowledge management is just a category. We provide web delivery and document management and enterprise search. And I can drill down to enterprise search, and here's where it gets both tiny and good. These are all the applications that provide enterprise search at our company. That's a lot of them, right? We have to maintain all these. So when somebody calls into the help desk and says, I tried to search on Jira and it didn't work, or I tried to search on the EQMS and it wasn't working, who takes care of that, or what is that thing, or whatever. So if I look at Jira, I can click on that and I can see some information over here on the side. So that's an active object. There's only one of these. So normally how you draw diagrams and you draw a bunch of diagrams and then they have the same thing in them, and so like you're just going to duplicate. Who's drawn process diagrams or technical diagrams or anything? Nobody? You have. What's your name, sir? Hari? Yeah, you have, and you're like, it wasn't fun. You don't look like you were having fun over there.
That kind of stuff is always an issue, especially in a smaller environment. You have to involve people who are not part of that the IT services, and they don't see the point of it.
Right. IT doesn't see the point of it, and you're trying, or they're not part of IT. It's hard to get alignment or whatever. And once you draw it, what happens? You put it somewhere, you do a PDF of it, you email it to somebody, and then you never see it again, right?
They still come to my desk to ask me about.
Yeah. So what was that thing?
Why did we put all this effort into it? Because they come and ask me.
Right. What does it look like, right? Yeah. So I can click on this, and I can see that this application, what it is, there's a description. I can see that it has certain sensitivities to the business. That's what we call it there. That its life cycle is invest. We're investing in Jira. So if somebody says, should I use Jira for my project? Should I put stuff in there? If that says deprecate, I can say no. They can look it up themselves. It also says Peter Dave Sheeran is the guy you call if it's broken. Okay? And you know what? I can click on Peter over here, and I can look at him as a person, and I can see what support he is. These are all the applications Peter Dave supports. He supports 8 things, okay? And he's R2 support for this one thing, okay? He supports this piece of equipment and supports this server over here in IBM Rally. IBM Rally is a data center, obviously, IBM. This is not a QAD data center. And so notice, what does that represent? What was one of those questions? What question does IBM Rally answer? Where, right? So that's a single location that we have. So when I click on IBM Rally, it brings up the location, shows you where it is in case you don't know, shows you the associations of the network, and shows you the applications that are running there. So we know what's happening in Rally. So if a bomb drops on IBM Raleigh, because somebody doesn't like the White House, boom, it's done. These are the applications that we're going to have to worry about, okay? And these are little icons you can roll over, and the little suitcase says the red is the highest business criticality. This little database is sensitivity of data. The yellow means medium and so forth. And I can look at this enterprise thing and say, well, what is that? Oh, here's the tech stack for that. And I could blow that up and have you look at it. Here's the tech stack for the test environment and so forth. And here, let me blow that up further for you. These are all live diagrams. This thing is a diagram of one of the systems that run there. And this is our regular ERP enterprise diagram, where the blue and the gray things are applications, and the yellow kind of parallelograms and the brown parallelograms, those are data going between those applications. So those are all live single objects. There's only one of everything in here. And so forth. This is the benefit of a database, right? But I'm trying to get the concepts through. Again, this is not necessarily a demo like go buy this thing, because it won't look like this when you buy it. You have to build the thing. But if I say this thing is called licenses, if I double click on that licenses, it's a piece of data. You can see up in this blue bar it says data. And it tells me what kind of data that is. And it tells me the applications that produce this license data are Enterprise, Microsoft Excel, and Workday. So it's kind of an overlap. Makes me want to have a business question about why is that? What are those licenses in there? It can go on. We track all of these objects in here. We track applications, capabilities, which I showed you. We have documents and so forth. In fact, one interesting thing we just did, or maybe not so interesting to me, is anybody follow or use the NIST cybersecurity framework? You know what it is, right? You've heard of that, okay? So give us the time to spin up here. Network seems a little more sluggish. The NIST cybersecurity framework is a list of 120-something controls put out by the National Institute of Science and Technology of things that you should be aware of in your IT environment. Of course, this wouldn't work. I wouldn't have to show you that one. And if it came up, it would show you the 5 categories of NIST, and it would show you all the subcategories of NIST, and you can drill down into there and find those things out. Let's see if we can find that a different way. Underneath strategies. Okay. I guess my network looks strong. That's really weird. Let's try a different view. Okay, that view worked. Let's try it one more time. There it is. Who knows? Somebody's playing with the internet. This thing is the 5 layers of NIST. But the cool thing is, this isn't just a document. Like, this document exists online. You can read it. It's 50 pages long or whatever. And what we do with this is we say, well, for data security and protect data and security, what do? I can drill down in here, and this is very tiny for this screen, but this shows you all the various controls of NIST. And if I double click on this one, which is data in transit is protected, that was one of those one of those goals that we want. Here's what it says: is it shows me all the applications where I've recorded that data in transit is protected fully end to end. So it's HTTPS from end to end completely, and these are the applications. So if an auditor came in, a security auditor came in and said, hey, is your data in transit protected? Are you protecting your people? I can say, well, what are you talking about? They could say, oh, well, is it Workday? Well, Workday is on there, and Workday is an application that does HRIS stuff. That's great. Is that enterprise thing? Remember I was showing you the enterprise thing? That's not on here. It's not protected. So we could make a business decision, wow, we need to protect that stuff because it's got PII in it. It's got personal data in there. We should protect that. And so then we can do the work and put it in here and keep it updated. So this drills down into any of these pieces that we have here. So it's a very effective way to go here. And where is my crazy team members? Where is my slide? So to kind of sum up, you really want to, in my opinion, you want to collect these things. This is the key slide that I'm trying to have you take away, is to ask the 6 questions about your enterprise. What is your enterprise? It could be whatever you define. It could be for a project. It could be for your whole company or your whole organization. Ask those 6 questions, write them down, and then write down the pieces that relate to those questions. Pillars of IT and keys of business. And I think if you assemble that, and I think with a little bit of work, maybe some cajoling, you can make your enterprise a stronger place. You can make it more flexible. You can understand all the pieces of it so that when you want to change it, you can change it. Because without understanding what something is, you can't effectively, cost effectively, and resource effectively change it in any appreciable manner and know really what you're doing. So, anyway, any final questions here? Yes, sir.
How often do you reconcile to reality with your?
That's a good question. How often do I reconcile to reality? I try never to reconcile to reality for personally. But for architecture, I do about half of those objects are pulled in from databases. So we pull in projects, that's pulled in from a project database. We pull in workers, that's pulled in from Workday database that tracks workers. We talked about SolarWinds for equipment. We talked about documents from our document management system so that we know what documents are. What isn't reconciled is applications. We had no application database, so this is our application database. So we reconcile that to reality every single day, in every single meeting, in everything we do. When we go to a meeting and people go, hey, did you heard about the ABC application? Oh no, we're gonna work on it, we're gonna upgrade it. Well, is it in our database? No, put it in the database. Anything else? Well, thank you for your time, I appreciate it. And the first guy didn't get shot, so that's good. I'll just unplug here. And I have this little USB-C adapter, but I think you just need HDMI. Yeah.